from beginning. Can everybody see my slides?
I can see.
Okay. The terrible thing about presenting is on one monitor like this is that like I genuinely can't see anything else other than this presentation. I can't see your faces. I can't see the chat. I can't see anything. So if it seems like I'm ignoring you in the chat, and I promise you I'm not, just unmute yourself and be like, Serena, please, like I have a question or a comment that I'd like to share. And I will happily shut up and let you let you use your voice. But I just note that I can't see the chat or your cute faces. So, but yes, without further ado, welcome everybody to the January 2024 Twin Cities Tableau User Group meeting. For those of you that might not know who I am, I'm Serena Roberts with Moxie Analytics, and I've been running this user group since like 2016, so like super long time. And it is just, I keep doing it because it's fun and I really enjoy this community, both local and then like wherever you are virtually. So we have a super awesome agenda for you guys today. But first, so those of you that are Midwesterners will understand that just like we like to talk about the weather. So just a super quick pop quiz about Minnesota weather because it's acting super crazy right now. What do you guys think the current temperature in Minneapolis is? Or the Minneapolis area-ish, just roughly. Any wild guesses? And remember, I can't see the chat.
Oh, cold, -20, -4 degrees, -5, negative something.
Okay.
37.
Yeah, there's some people that are actually experiencing that. Okay, so it is like roughly 35 degrees, which is 3 degrees Celsius for those of you on that. I mean, that's just crazy warm. And so for context, here's the second question. What is the lowest ever recorded temperature in Minneapolis? Any guesses on that one?
-1,000.
-1,000. I suppose you're not too far off. All right, I'll let you in. In 1888, the actual temperature here dropped to -35, -37 Celsius. So today we are like more than 70 degrees warmer than it has been.
Wow.
So crazy times here. All right, so back to the agenda for today. We've done our pop quiz on Minnesota weather. I'm thrilled to have Annie Nelson. I met Annie for the first time last Tableau conference, and my gosh, Annie, I think it was like 4 a.m.
It was. I'd had like so many glasses of wine.
Yeah, it was less than ideal circumstances for both of us, but it was fun. But since then, she has written a book. She's done some pretty incredible things in a pretty short time in the data space. So I thought it would be really cool to just have her come and talk about her journey and her book that really focuses on how she went from being a nanny to a data analyst in 6 months. She's now working at GitLab. It's been like a few months, right, Annie? Or
yeah, since mid-August.
Okay. And then we'll squeeze one of our get to know a member sessions. And if you haven't experienced that yet, I just got a list of questions and we take volunteers from the audience, or I might just pick you if no one volunteers, just to answer like 5 or 6 questions about yourself so we can all get to know you a little bit better. And then you will hear more from me. I will be talking about data visualization best practices and just kind of like some of the softer skills and softer techniques in data visualization. And that's how we'll round out our session today. Before we get started, just a few, mark your calendar kind of things. If you're local, we have the next She Talks Data event, February 6th. That's in Bloomington. Those events are free. We run them every other month. If you have not found yourself at the doorstep of that group, we operate on Meetup. So go check that out. And then our next TC Tug meeting is going to be February 29th. That will likely be totally virtual again, just because we don't know what this weather is going to do. We usually do some virtual only events in our coldest winter months, and then look to go back to in-person and hybrid once it starts thawing out pretty well. And then the much anticipated Tableau Conference 2024 in San Diego is April 29th through May 1st. I heard through the grapevine that registration is opening soon, so watch for more communication from Tableau on that front. Also got to put a plug in for the SysTech conference, which is another conference that myself and a bunch of other amazing gals from the local data community are putting on. There is a fee to attend that, but it's pretty low. You can find more details about that on Meetup, and you can also go to the moxiefoundation.org and check that out there. And then last but not least, just wanted you guys to be aware of that. We're running another Tableau 101 bootcamp at the end of May, and you can find more details about that at moxieanalytics.com. Okay, so since this isn't all about me and the events that I want to share with you guys, I'd just like to open up the floor. And if you guys want to share an event, if you want to share a job posting you have, if you want to share that you're looking for work, now would be the time to just unmute yourself and holler. You do that while I let this cat out.
I am looking for work. This is Jessica.
Jessica, tell us more about what you're looking for.
Well, I've got my degrees in math, and my most of my experience is in statistics. I've used SAS, Python, R. I've worked with a lot of healthcare data, but I've worked with marketing data, different things like that. So yeah, I'm just sort of coming back into the whole full-time career thing. I was taking care of my dad, and I don't have to do that anymore. So, and I was picking up consulting projects on the side as I could. And then I got certified. I'm not advanced SAS certification, but there's a lot of programming languages that I'm very, very comfortable with. I'm just learning Tableau. But yeah, I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but I can pick up programming languages pretty quickly. And I'm dedicated, pretty hardworking. Just, I need a job.
Nice. Yeah, sounds like you've got some good foundational skills that are very transferable and applicable to a lot of different data areas. So if y'all are looking, note Jessica's name. Jessica, even if you want to chat your LinkedIn profile,
Yeah, sure.
Make it easy for people to get a hold of you. Thank you.
Someone has a raised hand, Serena. I think you can't see it.
I can't. I'm sorry. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Person with your hand raised.
He looks like he's trying right now.
Can you guys hear me?
You're very, very quiet. But that may just be my volume, but try to speak up a little bit. Yep. We can hear you, but you're quiet.
Is it working?
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Well, sorry about that. My name is Enoch, and I was yeah, I can hear you. I was just gonna say, this is the first time I attended one of these kind of events, and I wanted to thank you guys for the event, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Awesome. Thanks, Enoch.
And May has her hand raised as well.
Hi, my name is May. I'm currently a senior in college. I am studying psychology and data analytics. I am super excited to get involved in the field. I'll be graduating in the spring, so I am looking for any sort of internship type of role or something to get more exposed in the field and put my skills in R and Python and SQL into more, real-time use.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, May. I will, just off the top of my head, I know that General Mills has a program for recent graduates. I will look up the gal's name while Annie is presenting, and I will send you her contact info. I think I can DM you on here. So yeah, I'll send that over and you can reach out and tell her I sent you, okay?
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Ian?
Hey, thanks so much for hosting y'all. This is my first time on as well, and I did the boot camp with the University of Minnesota in 2020, and I've been TAing and consulting, and I'm just I'll put my LinkedIn in there as well. I'm open to work, and I want to do more on the creative kind of data journalism side, but also open to getting all the experience I can. So.
Awesome. Welcome. All right. Okay, well let's move it right along. Annie, if you are ready, I am happy to pass the ball and let you take it away.
Yeah, I don't have slides, so it's just going to be us, but everyone with their camera on, thanks. So it's not just an empty room. So we can get going. I figure I'll just give you kind of an overview of my story, and then I actually, so I tried to make some slides, and then the slide had an error, but I did pull up another tab that I can share when I get there, the table of contents of my book, because I can see that on the Amazon thing because there's a free sample, because I think that's really interesting and helpful for people who are charting a roadmap and stuff to actually, I think it actually lays it out pretty well for me to just show you the table of contents. So that's where we'll move to. Wow, I saw some cameras go on. Thanks, guys. Hello. So I'm Annie, and I used to be a nanny. And yes, fun fact, one of the kids I worked with thought those were the same word, and he would ask other kids if they had an Annie, which was the cutest ever. And I loved it. I loved being a nanny. But then I decided to get my master's degree in occupational therapy, and I got my master's degree. I still got to nanny while I was getting my master's degree. And then towards the end of my degree in 2022, I had to do 6 months of internships that I had to pay my school to do. And so I had no money coming in during that time. And I thought maybe I could analyze spreadsheets as a side hustle, and that could bring me in $20 an hour. And that would be as much as I make doing Instacart on a good day, and it could be flexible. So I had seen the marketing for the Google Certificates course, which they have excellent marketing, and I thought I'd come out of that job ready. And so I took the course. It was just marketing. I did not come out of that job ready, but I had also started a TikTok because I thought single moms and people who work from home, who are stay-at-home moms and dads would probably really appreciate knowing that this was an option if it was an option. And after a month of having the TikTok, I had 10,000 followers, and people were really invested in seeing if I would be able to get a job. And then I think in about April of that year is when I went to Austin, Texas. I saw someone here in the chat is from Austin, and had one of the best weeks of my life because one of my friends lives there. And I was like, wow, you know what? If I were to switch careers into tech, I could work remotely and I could do a lot more of this. And so, because otherwise, as an occupational therapist or a teacher or whatever, you have to use your very limited PTO days to go to the doctor. So I was like, maybe I'll give this a shot, give this a go, see what happens. I had really good support from people on just TikTok at the time, but I started my LinkedIn. And then in July of 2022, so 6 months after I started, I got a job as a Tableau consultant. And it was a really good learning experience because my boss there had been doing it for 5 years, and he taught me pretty much everything that he could. He would often make like Star Wars references that I was like going to overcome him as like the master, and I was going to become the master. So that was great. And I thought at that point that I would probably shut down my social media when I got my job because mission accomplished. But then I was getting so many messages from people saying like that I helped them to leave their dead end jobs and double their salary. Now they could work from home. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, I guess I can't stop now. So I kept going with content creation. And then my content kind of started to evolve into, I was actually a Tableau consultant. So then I started to really learn a lot about like best practices, and being a consultant, you learn a lot. So working with a bunch of different clients helped me learn a lot quickly and see a lot of different kind of environments of tech and companies and stuff. And so in June of 2023, I got laid off from my consulting role, but I had already kind of seen the writing on the walls and was going to leave anyways. And so I was job searching. And then in August of 2023, so 3 months after that, I started at GitLab, which is a global asynchronous, fully remote company with a really amazing culture. And I get to do a lot. Actually, I don't know like anybody else who's been in the field for as long as I have, a year and a half, who's like really, like a lot of people I know are like, yeah, I'm taking screenshots of Excel to put into like PowerPoints that other people present. And I'm doing so many cool things at my job. And I'm really thankful that I've landed where I have, because I get to learn so much. And my company is currently migrating from another visualization tool called SciSense, where every single view and chart you see on the dashboard has to have its own custom SQL behind it. Even if it's just like a slightly different like dimension on it, custom SQL, the band and the line chart, custom SQL. So a lot of bad BI practices were encouraged there. And so now my company's coming into Tableau, and that's why I got hired, because I had the Tableau experience. And a cool story to share with this group is that I actually, I knew that I was looking for a job when I went to the Tableau conference, and I had been thinking, okay, this is a good chance to network. And while I was thinking about networking, I decided I would message all of the speakers of the sessions that I was excited to attend, because I know that as a person who puts out content, I really like when people engage with what I'm interested in. I get a lot of messages from people every day saying like, hey, can you get me a job? Hey, can you do a resume review? Which no, I can't do either of those things. But when someone is like, hey, I'm really interested in, like, I saw you'd made this post, and like, this is really interesting to me, and they comment on my post and stuff. That's what I'm there for. That's what's interesting to me. So I messaged the speakers. I said, I'm really excited to see your session. And if there's time afterwards, I'll come up and say hi. And I was really nervous about that, but my mom is a scientist, and she's like, oh, speakers love it when you talk to them after sessions. I was like, okay. These people are like industry leaders, some of them. So I was like, okay, I'll try it. So then the session I was most excited about was this Women in Data Strategy panel. And it was 3 women, and I went up and talked to one of them after the session. We talked for like 15 minutes, and she was a VP at like a company at GitLab, where I am now. But I didn't want to go full-time somewhere. I wanted to stay consulting. And so I was just trying to ask her how I can bring data strategy into consulting, because when you're a consultant, you don't really get to do strategy a lot, because they kind of come to you and they're like, I want you to build this dashboard, and you build it. And that's that for smaller clients. And so I was like, how can I bring data strategy into consulting? That's what I really want to do. And she's like, well, I think you should go full time somewhere. And like, I'd love for you to work for me. And I kind of like wrote it off, and I was like, yeah, that's so nice of you. But then she's like, oh, we should get connected on LinkedIn. I was like, well, we are connected on LinkedIn, actually. I messaged you before the conference to say hi. She's like, oh, that was you? I loved that. She said it really made a big impression on her that I had messaged her beforehand that I was coming, and then actually followed up and talked to her. So then, and I was also posting content. I do like these coffee chats where I talk to other data analysts about like how I became data analysts and stuff. And so she saw my content on LinkedIn for a couple of weeks. And then a couple of weeks later, she reached out and she was like, hey, I have this role opening up in my company, and I think you'd be really perfect for it. Are you interested in applying? And I had not yet been laid off, but I was like, yeah, actually, that sounds really interesting. And then I got laid off like a week later. I was like, yes, very interested. And then it took a couple months to go through the whole process, but I came in and I had only been in the field for a year at that point, and it was an intermediate job posting at like a public company with like 2,000 people. And so I don't think my resume would have made it off the stack if I had even found the job to apply to. I don't think my resume would have made it off the stack if I had just applied to it. But because I came in with a personal referral from the vice president of data and analytics, I was the first person through the process. And my coworker actually got hired to the role that I had applied for, but they saw my skills from being a Tableau consultant as like really helpful for another thing they were doing. So they actually opened up another role for me, which is what I do now. So that's just a testament to the power of networking and talking to people in person. Yeah, so that's kind of like in a nutshell, that's my journey. And then also I wrote a book because Wiley, as a publishing company, reached out to me in January, and they said, like, we think you have a really amazing story. We'd love to put it we think it would make a great book. We'd love to be the ones to publish it. And I was like, okay, I'm interested, but I'm going to New Zealand for 6 weeks in February. And they're like, okay, we'll talk when you come back. So then in March of 2023, I started writing the book. And then in July, I finished writing it. And I'll share the book. Let's see, share my screen. It was actually really interesting when I was writing the book because I have a lot of tabs. Let's see. I think I have to choose which one. Here we go. Share. So this book, as I was writing it, can you guys see the?
Yeah.
Okay, I can show you the title of it, the cover. I didn't make this. They made the.
Wow, that's awesome.
And my little acknowledgement to my boyfriend here in the front. So it was really interesting because when I wrote the book, it ended up being in parallel to my life. So I started writing in March, which was about a year after I started learning data analytics. And the fun part is about like learning, like how to learn, how to pick a good course and, how to organize things and what skills you're going to need and stuff like that. And that was when I was just reflecting on it had been a year since I started learning. And so I was reflecting on that kind of whole process of things. And then just about as I started to start writing part 2, which was getting into portfolios and stuff, I realized that my job, the writing, was kind of on the walls. And so I was like, I need to start working on my portfolio to get a second job. So while I was writing this entire portfolio section, I was working on my portfolio at the time, finding data sets. And I actually ended up making a project for this book that was like an example Tableau project that I saw from my perspective as like, I used the same data set of like an example of a first project, beginner project, intermediate, and then regular Tableau user. And I used the same data set and tried to use the same like color scheme and like styles so that you could see kind of the difference, in my opinion, between like, the first visualization and then the more advanced ones. And then I made a YouTube video to go along with it, describing my thought process behind it. And it was less about the visual appeal, although the visual appeal was definitely there, and more about like the approach of how I thought about what was going to go on the dashboard and like the flow of it. So I put those in, and that ended up being a great portfolio project for me. And I had 2 employers reach out to me to potentially offer me a job after writing that. After doing all of that. But then I also just put it right into my book. So that was a nice parallel. And then the day that I like officially was like, I finished the portfolio section, was ready to start writing about job searching, I got laid off.
Oh, wow.
This entire section about job searching and LinkedIn and, all the interviews and stuff, while 100% just job searching and also just like enjoying life because it was summertime, it was July. I like went to Austin and the UK and Canada and stuff. And then my publisher, I actually filmed a video of myself getting laid off. I didn't put the audio in it, but I just like, you could just see me. And I put it on TikTok and then like did a voiceover of like, here's what it was like to get laid off. And right now it has 2 million views on TikTok, and it blew up pretty fast. I wasn't like that girl, if you saw that video recently from Cloudflare, who was like arguing. I didn't do any of that. And my publisher saw it and reached out to me and was like, hey, you should add a section to your book about like getting laid off. So then I ended up adding this section about like navigating imposter syndrome and like doing well in the beginning of your job and preparing for a layoff, which is unfortunately a big just part of tech. And then a couple of things in the appendix, the roadmap. And I did an appendix section on Tableau tips because I was like, I know so much about Tableau. I might as well just put in a section on how to do well in your first projects, because people make a lot of the same mistakes. They think like their dashboards are too cluttered and they put the filter bar on the right instead of the left and stuff like that. So Serena is going to tell us more about those best practices later. But yeah, overall, that's my story. That's my book. I don't know if we're doing questions at the end or if we're doing questions right now, but this is where I would kick it over to questions.
My obvious question, Annie, is like, so you found it like it wasn't like a reenactment of you getting laid off. It was like an actual video of you. I'm like, how did you even get that?
Yeah, I knew that I was going to get laid off because so like at 5 p.m. on a random Wednesday, my boss's boss, who didn't like me because I was causing trouble, had put a sync onto my calendar for the next day at like 11 a.m. or something, which like never happened. And I texted my coworkers and my boss. I was like, I think I'm about to get laid off. And they were like, no, that's not possible. You just started that really big client. And then the next day at like a half hour before, my boss calls me and he was like, I just got off of a sync with the CEO and my boss, and I'm not supposed to tell you this, and they didn't want me to call you, but he's like one of my best friends, and they are going to let you off. I was like, I knew it. And so I had like 25 minutes of anxiety. Actually, I was trying to leave, and I was actually thinking about quitting because I was like mad about the way they were doing things, because I have like a strong sense of justice. But it was still like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be the most awkward thing. But I put my phone on like a little thing, and I just took a video of myself and then posted the video. I just cut the audio out because I didn't think that would be.
Well, that was most of the time you don't get that kind of warning, but you turned that lemon into lemonade for sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
My mom was like, I can't believe you did that. No one's ever going to want to hire you. I was like, I didn't do anything bad. It's just a video.
No. Yeah. You're good. Besides, I like troublemakers. What does anybody else have questions for Annie? Like, I'm sure you do. So please don't be shy. Oh, here we go, the hands. And Annie, remind me again, you have to bounce when?
I don't.
You don't? Oh,
no.
Okay.
But the podcast happened yesterday, so.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. All right, let's see. It looks like I saw a whole bunch of hands go up, and now I only see one.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So like I mentioned before, I am still a student. I graduate in the spring. I have limited professional experience when it comes to working with data, although like I said, I am studying data analytics as part of my degree, so I have experience there. Would you recommend kind of going towards like the certification route or more towards like completing projects to show my skills? I know like obviously both, but especially for like SQL, I'm like just starting to learn it right now, and I'm wondering if it's a better choice to go down the path of, doing a multiple month like certification course, like paying for those tests, or focusing more on creating a bunch of projects that show my skills.
So I am a really, really big proponent of the portfolio, and I'm really, really not a big proponent of the certifications. So I can give you my rationalization here. The portfolio, I think, is your best way to showcase that you actually can do data analytics. Because without it, when you get into interviews and they say, well, do you know SQL or do you know Tableau? You don't have anything to say, and you just, well, I've never used it professionally, but I've been, taking this course. That doesn't usually land well. I did dozens and dozens and dozens of phone screens, and no one was ever interested in a course or anything I was taking. But the portfolio projects, I actually think a lot of times recruiters won't look at your portfolio projects, but it gives you the confidence to then say, yeah, I have used SQL. I actually was just working it on this project. In it, I was using, these, just list your, bullet point, your top things that you did, like joins or unions or whatever. And I solved this problem, and I've linked to it in my resume, or I've linked to it in my portfolio in my resume if you want to take a look at it. And that was kind of my way to pivot around those questions of like, how much experience do you have? Because I had zero. And I think that if you can find ways to do projects like for your actual like school work or something, that would be great. as a nanny, I had no ways to like be creating any projects around my work. Although like I know people, I have a friend right now who's trying to become a data analyst, and she works at a school as like an admissions counselor, and she has a Tableau dashboard that she uses for work, and it's garbage. It's the worst dashboard I think I've ever seen. And she didn't make it. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity. You can go and remake this. And then in interviews, you can like actually say how, because interviewers are really looking to see that you can solve problems with data, that you're curious, you're a critical thinker. So a huge proponent of the portfolio projects. A good place to get introductory data is Maven Analytics has good free data. And then there's also this project called Real World Fake Data, like with the hashtag RWFD. And that's a popular data set. There's multiple ones on Tableau Public. And those are really good for learning. But then I think next after that, find ways to analyze data that is interesting, unique. And so like I have this ring which tracks like it knows right now that I'm sick 100%. The app is like, you're sick, girl. And I'm like, I know. And I think I could do a really interesting portfolio project on that stuff. So if you can find ways to do more than just simple sample data, that's a good way for building your portfolio. And then for the certifications, I did get the first level Tableau certification. I was just so thoroughly unimpressed with the certification when I took it, because it was just an indicator of my knowledge of Tableau. Like, do you know how to add a default comment to a field? And that has nothing to do with how I'm going to be able to actually use Tableau as a consultant. Like I was consulting at the time, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, none of this is testing my actual ability to deliver business value with Tableau, which is like the whole thing the business world uses it for. So I was incredibly disappointed with it. And I had heard someone give the advice that if you don't have any kind of a degree, those certifications can show that you have an ability to learn and take tests and stuff. But if you're already getting a degree, but Serena would be an interesting person to give an opinion on this, because you can tell us why, but I think your opinion would be good on that one.
Well, I agree with what you said 100%, Annie. I think the only times that I would encourage people to go the certification route, like where that effort is most recognized, is when your manager or your manager's manager or somebody in that chain between you and a promotion or a raise might need to justify that using something like a formal certification from something. But I think Annie's 100% right that, like, as an employer, as somebody who's been on both sides of that coin, like, I want to know what you're capable of doing in an applied way, right? Like in an applied context. And so you can focus on projects, and then you can use telling the story of that project and its impact, and weave in the skills that you have to get there, right? I used SQL. I did some web scraping, right? And I pulled this in Python. I built a I built a logical model, like whatever, right? You can speak to those things, and then have something to show for that effort. Because I think, sure, if you're great at SQL, that's one thing. But if you don't have the ability to apply that to solve a business problem in a real life scenario, like, whoop-de-doo. Yeah, 100% agree. I just think sometimes it's like, hey man, I want to give you a raise or I want to give you a promotion, but like, I need something to justify that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the advice. I also have kind of a connected question with that. Over the past 2 years in all of my data analytics and coding courses, I have a bunch of projects that I've done that are, hours of coding and multiple page reports. I have them linked in my projects section on my LinkedIn, but some of these projects are, a year old. Should I post about them? Because I feel like having them in my LinkedIn, yeah, that's great, but it's no one's really going to see them unless they scroll down and look at all of them. So I was just wondering, is it weird to post old projects or something, connect it with something new, or do you have any advice around that, or what I should do with those versus just having them linked?
Yeah, I think that for my standard advice for kind of that, like showcasing what you've done, is to turn your LinkedIn profile to creator mode, and then you can have featured posts at the top of your profile. And then you can, at the top, you can talk about some of the things that you have done, either to showcase your soft skills or your technical skills, and pin those. But you need to really, there's something called the pyramid principle of communication. If you look it up, basically we as storytellers tend to try and like to save the punch for the end of the story, but you should always punch first, especially like just considering talking to stakeholders and executives, punch first. So if you're going to have a post, don't make a really long post with tons of long paragraphs with your punchline at the end. Have what you've really done at the front of it. However it is that you're posting about it, whether it's a technical thing, whether you explain your thought process for getting through a problem. So turn your profile onto creator mode so you can do that. And then I think you should have a portfolio, which is your homepage that you can link in the top of your resume. So in my resume, I have my name and everything, but then at the top, I have my email, my phone number, and my portfolio linked, like hyperlinked. And so then people can click on my portfolio. And what I did is my first portfolio, I used a site called Wix, Wix. And then my second one, I wanted to retain my first portfolio so that people could see it who wanted to see what my portfolio looks like when I got my first data job. I didn't want to change it. So I left that one. And then I got my second one. I used a website called Card, Carrd. I really like that one because it almost has like a social media type scrolling format to it. Because I know a lot of people consume like media on their phones, works on phone or desktop. And what I have is just like an overview of each of the projects that I have done. That's like my landing page for it. And so it'll, like, for example, if I had a SQL project, it would be like the problem that I was solving, the insights, and then maybe like a summary of the functions used. And I would put like, if I use lead and lag and inner join or whatever, I would just put that in a bulleted list right there. And then they can click on that and then go to your GitHub where you have the SQL code, or for a Tableau one, have a screenshot that they can click and then go to your Tableau public portfolio. So just have this kind of landing page, and then just circle back to if you can post about it on LinkedIn. What I would recommend is if you do make a portfolio page, that gives you the opportunity to then kind of refresh it and just say, this is the thing that I worked on. I personally think when you get to the point of like applying for jobs, you want to have more recent stuff, especially because you want to show your growth like as a student. But don't take the old stuff out of your things so that we can see your growth. We can see how you've been learning. But yeah, that would be the kind of overall. And when you build your portfolio, is a good time to kind of refresh and make a post about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. So you'd recommend, that was another thing I was kind of like figuring out where and like how to create my portfolio, but you think starting off with Wix is an all right way to go about it?
I think they're both great. Maven Analytics also has a free portfolio hosting platform that is perfectly good, and it cuts out a lot of the work. With Wix and Card, you can really customize them. They're both fine, like equally. I just liked what I was able to do on Card. But the Maven Analytics one takes a lot of the work out of it, and I think for a lot of people, it's just fine. Like if you don't, if it's just fine, especially if you don't want to spend all the effort on building a custom thing. I mean, it's not like you have to program. You're still just picking out different styles and placing them. But
I like that better than like the GitHub pages.
The pages? What did you say about pages?
GitHub?
Yeah.
I think it's GitHub.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say on it is I think that somebody told me this tip recently for SQL code. Someone recommended that you use a notebook file. Have you used notebook files before? Because you said you've been doing Python stuff.
Who, me?
What's her name? Something May?
Yeah, that's
yeah, I've used notebooks before.
May, yeah. Yeah. So what they recommended was actually use a notebook file to put in your SQL code, and then use Markdown in between to then to kind of walk. If anyone were to go that far to read it, they could see kind of like your thought process and stuff. And then you have like this nice notebook file with your code. It doesn't need to be connected, and it doesn't need to be runnable. It's just, I think that actually would be a really cool way. Instead of just a GitHub file that's unstyled, having a nice Markdown formatted notebook thing for your SQL code, I think would be worth the effort.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Ian, I saw you had your hand
up. Enoch's had a question sooner.
Go ahead, Enoch.
Yeah, I had a couple questions about your networking journey. I was about like I just wanted to clarify. So you mentioned like coming into the company with a personal reference, and like so was that speakers that you were contacting? Those are the ones who referenced with the reference.
Yeah. So one of the speakers at the panel was Amy Bright, who's the vice president of data and analytics at my company, GitLab, and she's the one I had met who was really excited about our conversation and how I had messaged her beforehand. So she's the one who reached out a couple weeks later to ask if I was interested in the role, and then she was able to personally refer me to the role.
And then so how do you find like different events to find speakers?
Well, this was just the Tableau
Like
conference,
was that
which
like
admittedly
did you see that on the link how you found out about it and then you got in touch with the speakers?
I had known about the Tableau conference. I probably did see about it on LinkedIn because I have a lot of connections in the Tableau community. But the Tableau conference happens every year. I think I'm just pretty active on LinkedIn, so I do see like there's a happy hour that happens in the New York City area called the Low Key Data Happy Hour that I go to, that I found on LinkedIn. I think there's like meetups. If you go on the website Meetup, I think you can sometimes find like events that are less formal. But for conferences and stuff, usually those like you can just look up conferences in the things that you're doing, and they might like Snowflake has a conference. Snowflake is like a SQL thing. Tableau has a conference every year. Serena, just two conferences, right? You just mentioned two conferences or two like things. So
Yep. And the Tableau conference was on that list. So, Enoch, I think you get embedded in these communities, whether they're virtual or in person, and then that's just kind of like you're in the loop, right? Now Tableau has you signed up for this. Now Tableau has your email. Guess what? You're going to get notified when they put on events. And so, like connecting with other bigger vendors in the data space, both on like the software side and the services side, you'll start to get more and more of those notifications until you probably don't want them anymore. So all right, let's take maybe one or two more questions.
And then I just was to ask about communications. Are you going over?
Sorry, Enoch. I think there's a lag. I promise I'm not trying to cut you off.
Yeah, I think I might be have tech issues, but I was like because you meant having skills in like SQL and Tableau and stuff, but strong communication skills like also important. And do you think that also helped you like roles?
Yeah, definitely. I find that the reason that I've done fairly well in my career. Being a consultant right off the bat was a really cool thing. And now GitLab is a pretty well-known company. It's pretty well respected in the tech space. And it's really cool for me to be working there only a year and a half into my career. And I've been progressing really well at the company. And I think that it's actually because of my background in psychology and working with people and managing multiple children at the same time that who are different ages is not unlike managing stakeholders in not a bad way. It's just that you have to manage a lot of priorities at the same time. So actually my soft skills, my communication skills, my ability to form relationships with people and use empathy to understand where they're coming from has been more important for my career and growth than even the technical skills. I'd say the technical skills are the easy part, not to minimize it if you're learning it, but in my opinion, it's the easy quote unquote part.
Yeah, I think the technical skills are easier to learn. If the soft skills don't come easy to you, you're going to struggle a little bit more, right? Than if they were to just come naturally to you. And I can attest, like, when I first met Annie, like she had a level of confidence. Even though it was her first Tableau conference, she didn't know anybody there, but she wasn't afraid to come up to people and talk to us, right? And so I think there is a level of confidence there, coupled with like the humility in knowing that there's so much you don't know, and there's so much that you can learn. I mean, right, and we're all at some crossroads of that mix, but for sure, allowing yourself to be confident in what you can do and allowing that to shine through, I think, is really important. And that's one of the things that I remember about Annie when we first met, even though it was 4:00 in the morning, too much wine. So
I'm pretty sure I like told you what to do at one point.
I probably told you what to do too. So.
I could add one thing to that too. I'd say not just having confidence broadly, but if you can't have confidence in your skills, have confidence in your ability and desire to learn.
Yeah.
Like that can really get you far as well.
Yep.
In interviews too. I saw Ian had his hand up for a while for a question.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm in that like portfolio journey right now.
Yeah.
And I guess you kind of answered it, just talking about the different forms that has taken for you and suggestions that you have there. I'm a little bit more curious about front-end web dev, so I've just kind of dove into making single page applications.
Yeah.
I mean, my LinkedIn's there. It's my web page is linked on there. I've been having fun with Vue.js and just like some more, just like actual development there, actual coding of the web page. But I'm still figuring out the best way to highlight projects and stuff. So this conversation was helpful for that. Thanks.
Yeah, something I would be careful about is that, unfortunately, recruiters, it might be better with hiring managers at really small companies, but recruiters like to see kind of a focus. So I'll often see people be like, well, I want to become a data analyst or a UX UI researcher or a project manager or a developer. And it's like, great, awesome. But like when you go for an application, I mean, that's tricky because your LinkedIn is going to display that. But when you go for an application, make sure your resume, if it's a data analyst position, your resume is for a data analyst. Your interview is for a data analyst, not anything else, because unfortunately, we like to kind of silo things down. So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks.
I'd say the only caveat to that is like consulting firms.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you get hired on with a consulting firm, they want to be able to apply your skills to as many projects as possible, right? Sometimes they just want a warm body that can speak English.
Yeah. Cool.
Good question. So, all right. Well, this was a great discussion. Does anybody have any like burning questions? Like, I'm going to die if I don't get to ask Annie this. I don't want to cut this too short, but I feel like we could go on forever, and I want to keep on track time a little bit. So,
is there a way to pay for the conference when you don't have an employer to send you?
Yeah,
hi, Cody. Are you talking about the Tableau conference or?
Yes.
Okay. There really aren't any shortcuts around that. And it is an expensive conference. I
paid for it myself last year. It was like $2,000, not including meals or anything, just flying there and being at the conference.
Yeah, it is not.
I can hop in here for a quick second. So right now the call for speakers is open. So if you apply to speak and they select you, then they comp your attendance. Your ticket is covered. It won't cover your flight and your lodging, but it's a big savings if you're selected. So worth a shot.
Yeah, I have been thinking about doing a speaker session, and if I can get everyone's brain for a second, I was wondering what people thought about it. I've been thinking about doing a session on building your personal brand on socials and how that can elevate your career, because sorry about the dog. I have 70,000 followers on TikTok, 75,000 followers on LinkedIn. And as we can hear, as you heard, it's really been really good for my career. And I see a lot of people really curious about creating content. So I'm just curious if anybody has any feedback, that would be like an interesting session.
I would definitely be interested in something like that.
Yeah, I think I think there's an audience for that for sure, Annie. And you know what? Submit it. See what happens. You can submit more than one thing. You could submit many as you want.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm submitting 2 this year because I don't want to pay for my own ticket.
Yeah.
So I'm trying every avenue that I possibly can to get there. Annie, last year there's a guy named Zach Bowders who did a presentation that was kind of about visiting what you love, and a lot of what he talked about was tying into that sort of building your own personal brand. And in his case, it was moving from trying to build really, really long, immaculate, really condensed dashboards to very small, almost like vignettes of like, here's an interesting data question that came up in my mind. I'm going to build a 1 worksheet dashboard that kind of answers it in a really pretty cool way. And that kind of catapulted his, I guess, social currency in terms of followers, and kind of built his own personal brand around that. So if you're looking for somebody to reach out to learn more about that, he'd be a great resource. But his talk was very well attended. I was one of them, so I'd be the first one to come see it.
That's cool. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Annie. I'm glad that everyone got to hear the details about that myself at a normal time of day, and you know that everyone else got to hear that story as well. I think that it's like creating so many different low barrier pathways to enter into the data field it's such an important thing, because like this industry is only going to grow and become like everyone's going to work with data in the not too distant future, right? It's going to be part of everyone's job.
Yeah.
And so these skills are going to be ubiquitous, and the better you are at them, the sooner, the better off that you will be.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to, message me and stuff, I'm on LinkedIn, as mentioned. And so,
or go buy your book on Amazon, right?
yes, the book is on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Walmart and thrift books, all kinds of places.
Yeah, go buy Annie's book and help a gal out. So, hi.
No, I just wanted to ask really quickly. There was a lot of like information, like people's LinkedIn's and links to different resources. Is there any way that this chat is going to be saved so I can access it later?
That's a good question, Nina. I don't know that the chat gets saved. If I can find a way to do it, I will post it. But I'm gonna say I don't think the chats get saved, unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
Sorry. Okay. All right, let's jump into. We're gonna skip get to know a member just for time's sake, and we'll just jump into my presentation. And if we have enough time after that, then we'll do a get to know member. Not that I don't want to get to know you all, but I try to be a good timekeeper. I don't like to keep people past the time I say that I'm going to. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. Let's see if I can just do a window. I cannot. And the share options in this platform are not great. Okay, jump to this presentation. From the beginning. Okay, and again, I can't see your faces. I can't see the chat. So if you guys have a question, comment, whatever, please just like unmute yourself, or, Annie, I don't know if you're going to hang on, or Vince or anything. If you guys can help me monitor the chat and holler at me if there's anything
I'll
I
keep
need
an eye
to.
on the chat for you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we are going to talk about the softer side of data visualization. This is actually it's a new training that we're developing. So what I've done is kind of picked out a portion of this that focuses on the data visualization best practices. The other components to this training are about, and Annie actually talked about this a little bit, about like empathy, like the things that you need to do, like the softer side, the qualities that you need to embody just sort of as a human being to be really good at this kind of work. So like, how do you be a great stakeholder or a great partner to your business stakeholders? Like, how do you tell good stories? Like, what are the, when you dissect that, what does it mean to tell a good story in terms of data visualization? But today we're going to focus on kind of that middle section, which is the data visualization best practices. So again, this is me. I'm Serena Roberts. I'm the Chief Get Shit Done Officer at Moxie Analytics. I'm Minnesota born and raised. I have one husband, 3 children, 2 kitties who have made an appearance today, and 1 dog. All right, data viz best practices. I'm saying there are 10. There are more, right? And but what I tried to do here is really focus on the things that were more accepted and less controversial in the data viz space. Because some of these things are subjective, right? It depends on the use case in so many of these situations. But like, as a kind of a rule, which always has exceptions, these are the 10 best data viz practices that I think everybody should try to follow most of the time. So the first is keep it simple and organized. And with each of these 10 best practices, I'm going to kind of show you an example of like what good or okay is, and then like, okay, how do you make it great, right? I think that, if you're, there are certainly bad dashboards out there, right? Like we've all seen them. And that's a subjective term also, but I've seen some really, really terrible ones. And I've seen people showcase really, really terrible ones with like extreme levels of competence. I can't help those people. I don't know if anybody can, other than just trying to keep pounding with these messages and keep showing these examples of like good and great and good and great, right? Like we don't your dashboard shouldn't be a hot mess with neon colors and all that stuff. So, so this is an example of someone who has done a good job of keeping their dashboard simple and organized, right? We've got these sort of, contained areas where we have different visuals, different types, right? I wouldn't look at this dashboard and go, oh my God, this is really terrible. But let's see what an example might look like. A great example of this might look like. Animation. Okay, so this is an actual Tableau dashboard by Atito Acquare. And so this was before it, I took his dashboard and like messed it up a little bit. So he did not do this. This is his work and it is beautiful. And so you might think that like the differences between the first view and the second view are pretty subtle, and you're not entirely wrong. They are fairly subtle, but those subtle differences, they make a big difference in our brain's ability to process information quickly, right? It might take, go from taking 3 seconds to understand something to 1, right? And percentage-wise, that's huge increase or huge decrease. So we see here that we've got all the KPIs at the top now. These just numbers with the spark lines below. And then we've got this nice sort of 3x3 grid with all of the supporting visuals laid out. We've got our navigation on the left-hand side. This is just a really clean, really simple and organized dashboard. I'll touch a little bit on symmetry here because symmetry is actually it is the last the last best practice that I added to this list. It was kind of buried in the first one. Like I mentioned it, but I was like, you know what? Symmetry or asymmetry is so important that it needs its own, right? It needs its own moment. So we can see here that, these 4 KPIs, right? They're evenly distributed across the dashboard, right? This 3x3 grid, it's evenly distributed across the dashboard. So symmetry obviously doesn't mean, having good symmetry doesn't mean that you need to, cut this dashboard down the middle and it needs to mirror each other, which this one does to a certain extent. But following those rules of symmetry and asymmetry, like the rule of thirds, and I won't go too deep into those things, but a dashboard needs to have some visual balance to it. Our brains do not like it when, or at least my brain really does not like it when I look at something. I'll see a picture. There's a picture right here I'm looking at that's crooked in my daughter's room, and I just want to fix it. Let me do that. Our brains like things to be lined up. Okay, number 2, the most important information goes first. So in this example of what's good, we see total sales, total profit, profit margin, total quantity, right? And then we've got, profit margin by state and sales and profit by subcategory, which is fine. It's fine. But if I actually put myself in the shoes of, a regional sales director, right? Like a consumer of this dashboard, and think about, if I'm the CEO of this company, or if I'm, someone who actually cares, who goes home and thinks about this stuff at the end of the day, what is the actual measures of, what's the most important actual measures of success for this company? So that might be looking at profit margin first, right? Like as a business owner, at the end of the day, if we're not making a profit, like we're doing something wrong. If we're not making a profit, then we're not going to be able to continue doing business for very long. So profit margin, arguably the most important financial KPI from the business's perspective. And then following that, we might want to see total profit, right? It's like, what's our profit? What's our profit margin? Total sales, and then total quantity. So we are kind of using our common sense, flexing those empathy muscles for our stakeholders, and really putting ourselves in their shoes about what we want to see. Like, what is that most important information to them, and giving it to them right away. This dashboard is by Agata Kederick, who does an amazing job. Okay, number 3, don't be afraid of white space. And this is me being a little bit cheeky here with just a blank page, right? Don't be afraid of white space. Each one of the examples that you see, all of them actually do a really great job of including white space. And this isn't to say that like, oh, well, Serena, what about the dashboards that have dark backgrounds, right? That's fine too, right? That's a style choice. Sometimes for the use case, the brand guides or whatever, like that's very appropriate. What I mean by that is like, don't cram every pixel of space with stuff. Leave some emptiness, leave some padding, leave some margin, so that we can clearly see the delineation between each element on that dashboard, and not, confuse or cross wires. And so next one is design with the use case in mind. I know we've touched on that a little bit, but there are 5 questions here, 5 to 6 questions here. There's only 5 of them on this list, but there are some really key things that you should always know before you start developing, before you start building something. You got to know who your audience is. You have to know what business problem or question they're trying to solve. You need to know like their ideal, what is their ideal, like in a perfect world, how will they act with this visualization? You're going to want to know how often they plan to access it. And then you're going to want to know what they will do with that information next. If you can answer these questions, whatever you build is going to be much more relevant and much more on point, it'll hit the mark much closer than if you do not If you're just like, somebody asked me for a dashboard, on how many shoes we sold last week, boom, here it is, right? They're going to come back to you. They're going to come back because that wasn't the actual thing that they were trying to solve, right? It didn't hit the mark. So asking these questions, even if the information isn't volunteered to you by your stakeholders, it's going to save you time if you ask them up front. So make sure you do that. I'm going to try to play this video for you guys. Let's see if it works. So this is just my pro tip. This is a super quick video of me hand drawing a mock-up, mocking up a dashboard just by hand. And it kind of goes through the process that I take to do that. I don't always hand draw mock-ups. Sometimes I do it in Excalidraw. Sometimes I do it in PowerPoint. Sometimes I actually just go straight to Tableau. It just really depends. But I do think that hand drawing a mock-up is actually pretty impactful. Like, for whatever reason, like, people are generally a little bit more impressed when they see something that's hand drawn. So brainstorm your layout, right? You understand your data, you brainstorm your layout, prep your canvas. I just take a grid paper and like tape them together to get the length that I need. I sketch everything in pencil and I erase, right? and then I outline my my baselines with Sharpie, and then I go and color it in with colored pencils and give it some shading. Right? And then I take a photo or, somehow create it digitally and then share it with those stakeholders. I'll send you guys a link to that video in case you wanted to check it out again. Okay, moving along. Use color sparingly and with intention. So what we see here is a dashboard where someone has tracked their running data, right? It's by season. So each data point is a run. It's sized by, I believe, the length or the time of the run, maybe the miles. But what we can see here is that, kind of looks like they're doing more running in the summer, which makes sense. I think the general message here is the person runs a lot. But what if we go ahead?
Sorry, I'm not sure if it might be on my end, but if you're showing the presentation again, I'm still just seeing the video.
Oh, shoot. Let me.
No, I'm seeing the track. I mean, I'm seeing the track.
Okay, let me.
Oh,
Okay,
it must be on my end. Sorry about that.
Nope, that's all good. I'm glad you said something. Did it? I just went out of presentation mode. Is it still doing that for you?
No, I can see it now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right. So what if we were to apply color with a little bit more intention, right? Because it's pretty, but like the colors are really not providing us any information. So what great looks like, and this is an actual dashboard by Thomas Gaspar, and they have color-coded these by season. So now we can see that, yes, there are a lot more runs in the summer. We can clearly see the delineation between how much they're running in the summer versus the other seasons. So now color is actually providing with some information. It's conveying information instead of just adding aesthetic. And in my opinion, there are very few reasons why adding color just for aesthetic is worth it. So be careful. All right, guys, I'm gonna whip through some of these chart types pretty quickly because there are a lot of different chart types, and the chart type that you select for the use case is important. I would say, gosh, probably 8 times out of 10, you might just need a bar chart. So that's why bar chart is first, right? They're best for comparing one metric across one dimension, right? For our example, sales by quarter. We have a stacked bar chart, right? Still very simple and straightforward, but these are best for comparing one metric across 2 dimensions. For example, sales by quarter by region. Now we see the colors will represent a different quarter. Line charts, obviously, these are best when you have like a time series, right? You want to see trends across a sequential dimension, like a date. For example, sales opportunities by rep over the last 12 months. This is a combination chart where we're combining bar charts with line charts. And these are great for viewing 2 to 3 metrics that are related to a sequential dimension, like a time series. And they usually have two axes, right? One on the left side and one on the right side. And yes, I realize that the one on the right side is backwards numbers. Please disregard that. Shouldn't take away from the message. So what we're seeing here is ROI, a rating and average by movie duration buckets. So we've got this tomato meter, the tomato user meter, and then the movie's ROI. A donut chart. Donut chart is an easy way to measure contribution to a whole across a single dimension. For example, percent of total sales by region. And obviously this is the same. Like you could use a bar chart and a donut chart interchangeably, just depending on your preference, depending on how easy one is to build in whatever tool you're using versus the other. But oftentimes like a bar chart is just more effective. And sometimes you're like, oh, you feel like I've used too many bar charts. I'm going to use a donut chart instead, just to break it up a little bit. What we should think about doing there is like rotating, instead of having vertical bars, you can have horizontal bars. Just make sure that you're using some kind of logic to say these bar charts are going to be horizontal and these bar charts are going to be vertical, and stick to that. But donut charts, pie charts, they do exist. People use them. You might get yelled at, but go ahead. Scatter plots. These can be very helpful when looking for a correlation between two metrics and like finding outliers in your data. For example, here we're looking at level of particulate matter and rainfall amounts. So like, is there a correlation between particulate matter and the level of rainfall? Area charts. Area charts are a lot like bar charts, but preferred when trying to emphasize a change in a metric over time, because it connects, right? You can see the dips and the valleys a little bit easier because that line is continuous throughout the time series. In this example, we're seeing sales revenue over the last 20 years. So the same thing like bar chart has a stacked bar chart version. Area chart has a stacked area chart version. Right? So it's exactly like the area chart, but it accommodates an additional dimension. In this example, we're seeing sales revenue over the last 20 years by region. Bullet charts, they're small, or they pack a big punch. So it's a space-saving way to look at in this example, like a current value, a previous value, and a target or an average. So here we're seeing sales this year versus last year, right, in the different colored grays, and then your progress to your target, which is that red line. Gauge charts, it's a lot like a bullet chart. It's kind of like if a bullet chart and a donut chart had a baby. It takes up more space, and depending on what tool you're using, these can actually be really challenging to build. So, but they do exist. In this example, we're seeing sales this year and progress to target. This year if it were 2017. But bubble charts. Bubble charts can be great tools. It can accommodate 4 data points using the X and Y axis, and color and the size of the bubble. So it can actually pack quite a bit of information. There's a really great visualization that tracks, I think it's Hans Rosling. It tracks population like over the last, I don't know, it's like 400 years or something like that across the countries. And it's an animated visualization, and it just sends such a clear message, just a strong message about like which countries advanced while others didn't. And then you can see wars happen and famines and, diseases and all that fun stuff. So these kinds of charts can be super powerful. In this example, we're seeing sales by region, colored by quarter, and sized by profit. The funnel charts. These have actually pretty specific purpose. A lot of times you see them used like measuring a sales funnel. This is just, they're designed to measure like data as it progresses through distinct different phases. So here is the sales funnel, right? We've got leads, potentials, and then potentials one, right? So we've got like the top of the funnel and then like won deals. So that's and again, depending on what type of tool you're using, funnel charts can actually be pretty difficult to build as well. Radar charts, they I would say they have a pretty specific use case as well. I have seen them used to sort of map like where people are on like Enneagram kind of things, or like Myers-Briggs, where you've got sort of these different attributes, and everybody has a little bit in each of those areas, but sort of like where do you lean in a little bit stronger, and being able to like compare how you where you lean and where you wax and wane on those metrics compared to someone else. So, right, it's just like you're almost comparing the shape, right? You're turning those data points into a particular shape and then comparing those shapes against each other. So it is super cool. There's specific use cases for it. But again, I think these are among the more difficult to implement from a technical perspective. Example, we're seeing budget spent versus allocated, so they can see where they're way out of whack. Okay, time check. Okay. So that's the chart types, guys. So that whole section was really meant to just say, hey, choose the right chart type for the job. Okay, and here's, there are so many more chart types out there than that, but I think they just kind of keep getting more complicated and fancier, and right, there's Sankeys and dandelions and like the list goes on and on and on. Violin charts, I've seen some crazy things, but at the end of the day, I think when you are picking a chart type, just keep it simple, right? 8 times out of 10, the bar chart is going to be your friend. Right, it's going to be your friend right now, and it's going to be your friend when you have to go and update that dashboard. And it's most definitely going to be the person who takes your job over when you leave. It's going to definitely be their friend. So unless you're competing in like the Iron Viz, just keep it simple. You probably need a bar chart. All right, so that takes us to making good use of icons. So here in this dashboard, right, this is good. This is a good dashboard. We can see clearly that like one section is this is call center data. We've got phone, chat, email, and escalations. That's fine. But because our brain is able to process pictures so much quicker than we can text, here's an example of what this dashboard looks like with some icons. And you could actually do both, right? You could have both the text and the icons there. And I will say from an accessibility standpoint, that's probably the best thing that you should do, because maybe you might forget to put alt text in the image, and screen readers might not read it that well. So having the image there and the text is probably the best case scenario. So you know what you're looking at right away. All right, tiny details matter. So what do I mean by tiny details? These are things like, have you stopped to give all of your visuals like a self-explanatory title, right? Certainly your dashboard should have a title, but each visualization should have titles, and they should just be, right? Like you shouldn't need to go to an enterprise business glossary to look up whatever acronym that means, or a degree in statistics or whatever. They should just be like normal human language, self-explanatory, right? You can use subtitles. So you'll have a title, and then you can use subtitles in just smaller font that explain the user interactions. Like, for example, we'll just go back to the sales example, right? Like the title would be like year-over-year sales, right? And then the subtitle might be like, or click on the bar to drill into the quarter, or use the filter on the left-hand side to focus in on a particular department, whatever that might be. So those subtitles can be a great place for you to just explain how a user can get more value out of that dashboard without them having to come back to you and ask you questions. And then labels, just like make sure you're labeling things and using, again, normal human language. Well-formatted tooltips. Not every visualization tool is going to have a tooltip function, but certainly Tableau does, and you can do some pretty cool stuff there. You can even have other data visualizations inside that tooltip that show tons more information. Tooltips are often overlooked. They are often like the last thing that you think about when you're developing a dashboard, but they can add a ton of value. And I think the main message with all of these tiny details is that you are trying to prevent the amount of times that an end user is going to need to come back to you or someone in your department and ask you these same questions over and over and over again, right? So, put a timestamp for freshness so people don't come back and say, when was this data refreshed, right? You can even link to like a field glossary or like a data dictionary or other relevant dashboards, like right in that dashboard. Some people may disagree, but I think end users are going to end use, and they want the ability to export the data. And that can have to do with like their current levels of trust in the data, their historical experience, with data and reporting in general. But like as that trust is building in the dashboards that you produce and the data that's available to them, I would see that my hope would be is that the inclination to export that data declines. But give it to them because they're probably going to ask. So just give it to them right out of the gate. And then again, just like any details, think about any details that can address those first and second line questions because you've got other stuff to do, right? You've got other awesome dashboards to build. So give all that information to them right out of the gate and let them be about their business and let you be about yours. So here's an example of the tiny details. There's a lot of information. This is a dashboard by Damola Lapido, who is also fabulous at developing amazing Tableau dashboards. And so this is the visualization of hottest peppers across the world. And so this is much more of like an infographic style, and the tooltips in this dashboard, since it's not live, you can't really see, but there's a lot of teeny tiny details in here, and it doesn't clutter things up in a way where if like I don't care about those tiny details, I'm still going to be able to get information from this dashboard. But if I really do want to like look at the ring counts, I can zoom in and I can get that deeper level of detail. Okay, so to round this out in our last couple minutes, guys, set standards and create templates. This is super important. I know it's a very proactive space to operate in, but like I encourage you guys to get there whenever possible because it decreases development time and it increases consistency in your end user experience, which leads to trust in your data and your analytics efforts. So what do I mean by that? Standards, so your companies probably have style guides. You can create style guides using your company's, brand style guides to influence, to set standards for how you build your dashboards. You can set color palettes. You can set font sizes, styles, right, for your headings and your subheadings and your titles. You can create a library of icons so there's consistency across there. You can say, guys, our filters are going to look like this, right? You can set those standards, and they do go a long way. And it just takes the guesswork out of that. People aren't having to constantly reinvent the wheel and go back to like, oh, what size font should this be? So it's super helpful. Here's an example of what a template might look like in Tableau, right? So the idea here is that you're going to set areas that are fixed, and then set areas that are sort of like the world is your oyster. So you can get really, really nitpicky about like where the title goes, where the logo goes, where your main subtitles are going to go, where your filters are going to go. And then you guys, like this, like here's your space to just go wild. And you can input just some placeholder text to remind them of these great dashboard best practices, and then links to other resources that you've procured, like those icon libraries, chart pickers, your style guide. So it's literally all right there every time they go to develop a dashboard from scratch. All right. That is it. I know, man, we're right at time. So I'm free to hang out for a little bit longer in case anybody has any burning questions, but I will just say I appreciate you guys for coming, and if you do need to drop, I will not be mad.
Thank you so much. This was really great.
You bet, Jessica.
Kim had asked if the PowerPoint slides would be available afterwards.
Yeah, I can share a version of these. Yep. Was that too fast, guys? I'm sorry. I felt like I just whipped through it.
Your pacing was great.
The chat was actually very busy. A lot of people were chatting. So
good.
Not like questions, just like sharing their experiences and stuff like that.
Awesome. All right, yeah, this whole one monitor thing situation is just not great. Yeah. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the slide about mocking it up. I was wondering why. You could clarify why draw the piece of paper first.
Yeah, good question. So, and this can be, I think that there are times when it's not necessary, but like if you have a big project and it's high profile, like it matters, you got to get this right. And or you have a lot of different stakeholders, like a lot of people whose opinions you need to consider. Like sometimes we'll just do whole like design sessions, and we'll have like 5-10 people in that room, and they all have opinions about what this dashboard should look like. And so before we go say, hey, can you give us some sample data so we can go mock something up in Tableau? A lot of times it's just quicker to do that on paper, like outside of Tableau. Because then you're not met with those technical barriers of like, oh, I want to build a radar chart here, but I don't want to spend 8 hours doing that. I'm going to spend 10 minutes and draw it. And then the process there is that you get everyone's buy-in. Say, hey guys, here's what this dashboard is going to look like right now. What do you love? What do you hate? And then, at a certain point, you might need to iterate that a few times, but at a certain point, everyone's going to be like, yep, love it, go. And then that's your green light to go and start building. And it reduces the time that it takes you to finish that dashboard from the time that you start building it in whatever tool you're building it in. Versus if you go to the tool first, you're going to have to do all that iteration and that exploration in the tool. And that can oftentimes be harder than doing it outside. Sometimes it's not. If it's a simple, straightforward thing, just go to the tool and get it done. But there are instances where mocking it up outside of the tool is really helpful. Does that answer your question, Ina?
Yes, that answers my question. About I think earlier you mentioned something like putting the filters on right instead of the left, and I was curious on why exactly that's a practice.
Oh, no, that was just you could put those darn filters wherever you want. That was just an example. Just an example.
All right then, thank you.
Yeah, that was not a hard rule. You can put those filters anywhere. Anywhere that makes sense.
One other thing that I wanted to jump in and say on the idea of sort of like hand drawing a dashboard out to collect ideas. is that when you're drawing something by hand, physically on paper, you don't add what doesn't need to be there, right? You start with putting the bare bones of what you need on there. And I found, for me anyway, that taking that approach helps me lean into more of a sense of minimalism and not overcrowding, that I always fell victim to before I started sketching things out, before I actually started building it.
What do you use, Vince? Do you hand draw or do you do something else?
I hand draw because I haven't found anything else that that lets me kind of exactly get what I'm thinking on paper.
Yeah, I mean, it also a little bit makes you feel like you're 7.
I actually use Figma because the drawing for me is really tough. And I found when I was consulting, I wanted to be able to share my mockups with my clients. And I was like showing these like 7-year-olds drawings. And I was like, it wasn't working. And what I like about Figma too, now that I work collaboratively with a team, I can like share it with people and they can like leave comments right on the document and stuff. So my company now actually uses Lucid Chart, but it's very similar to Figma. And once I learned how to use it, which didn't take me long, I can just slap things down where I want them. And what I like about that is I can do the scoping. I can use like sticky notes. So I'll have like a board that'll have like sticky notes of the with different colors to kind of do the categories, like the questions that I'm asking and like the things I need answering and the different data fields and stuff. And then I can have that transition into the dashboard, which is really cool.
Yep. I love it. Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's kind of a standard part of that process.
Yeah, I will say that one of my most valuable purchases that I've made in my data career is just a stack of graph paper, because I'm constantly writing out crazy ideas and shapes that I would have no idea how to do in tools like Figma, and like got just all sort of like, I know how to do the math for this kind of stuff, but actually putting that in a tool that's the hard part for me. But I can brain dump on paper just fine.
Yeah, I started doing the graph paper drawing like for like my DIY projects at home, like home improvement stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like already something that I kind of like was used to doing. So when I started building dashboards, it was just like, oh, I'm just gonna mock this up. So for me, it's fun. I think it's also a personal preference thing. I've also used Excalidraw. I hear lots of people use Figma because, they're like peanut butter and jelly with Tableau. So I think the advice there is just like find something that works for you and make that part of your process, because it adds a lot of value.
All right, thank you everybody for answering the question.
Yeah.
And I have to go now, but thank you again and goodbye.
All right, thanks, Enoch.
I never leave home without my remarkable tablet.
Yes. Yeah, we actually just bought everybody in our company one of those. So they're super great. It's like an infinite notebook.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Excuse me.
So I also have to leave, but on that note, pleasure, everyone. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Thanks for coming. Okay, well, let's wrap this up. Again, thank you all so much for coming and hanging out for a few extra minutes. We meet every month, guys. Most of the time there is at least a virtual attendance option. There's usually one meeting out of the year that's just like, no, we're just going to meet in person here in Minneapolis. But I hope that you guys will all kind of keep an eye on what the Twin Cities Tableau User Group is doing going forward, and join us again sometime. And thank you, Annie, for sharing your story.
Yeah.
It's lovely to have you here.
Yeah, it was nice to talk.
All right, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great rest of your week. Bye.